Today we're reading a Christmas-themed story by Norma Gay Prewett. Norma Gay Prewett is a painter, poet, storyteller, and retired senior lecturer in creative writing, literature, and composition at the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater. In 2013, she published a book of poetry called The Perpetual Commotion of the Heart. Today, we're reading her story called A Jangle of Galoshes. The 5 girls waited, ranging from age 3 to 14. They waited to hear that familiar sound, the stomping and the jangle of the big black rubber galoshes. The ones with the buckles packed with snow being tugged off in the kitchen entrance. He would smell of cold, kerosene, and mysterious other outside places. The odor of tobacco smoke would permeate the still, slightly chilly air of the leaky farmhouse. Their mother would be at the stove. The comforting smell of pork and beans simmering all day and cornbread would waft among the more earthy odors that Daddy stomped off. He sighed and set something in a crumpled brown bag on the kitchen table. In their shared 2 back bedrooms, they heard him stir the coal fire in the middle room, the living room. He mumbled to their mother as he shrugged off his overalls. They might hear their mother's quiet complaint that some snow had traveled in via the cuffs of his trousers. She swept the puddling moisture into a dustpan. The floors were cracking linoleum. The farmhouse was a tenant farmer rental. Carpets were considered too luxurious for the basic shelter it learnt the family newly arrived from the Ozarks. There was no extra money for niceties like home furnishings. The beige divan, where Daddy would soon sink as he rattled out the folds of the afternoon newspaper, sighed as heavily as he, and seemed equally discouraged. But this night was different. Their Daddy had promised a surprise. He had won a raffle at the feed store, and tonight was the appointed night for revealing the grand prize. Probably his fatigue from long hours as janitor at both the grade school his kids attended and the church a block away somewhat tempered his expectations of the joy he could bring his little girls. He knew they had been pining to know what the wonderful surprise would be. He had kept its exact nature from both the kids and his wife. At 5 years old, Ava felt a little sinking. Surprises were frequently second-hand clothes from the rich landlords down the road, although once it had been red taffeta ruffled panties from some dance recital. Often, as now, the surprise was not very large. With children, size mattered in surprises. She knew it could not be the white, high-topped ice skates like the beautiful blonde lady wore that one time Ava had seen her on the rich neighbor's television. But in her heart, she craved those skates. Christmas would arrive in 3 weeks, whether Mama was ready or not. She had about ruined her eyes sewing in the dim light of the overhead fixture. Their house was dim, drafty, and defeated. But Fay did her best. It was clean. She made sure of that, even if it meant sprinkling Bonhomie on black heel marks and scrubbing till her small square hands took on a grayish tint. They were quiet children, like feral cats, not wanting to call too much attention to themselves. Unlike modern fathers, theirs was a by-the-book dad. If Mother insisted, sometimes when he arrived home, so tired he could barely eat his dinner, he would have to spank a child or two who had gotten on Mother's last nerve. That day, Ava had talked back. When Mother reprimanded her, she tried to run away down the long side ditch along the road. She tied a long, scratchy, smelling scarf around her head and slapped a toboggan hat on her head. She pulled on mismatched mittens and her sister's hand-me-down beige and pink Easter coat and ran. The closest house was 1/2 mile away, and they would just bring her back. Her tears froze to her face as she tried unsuccessfully to break a path through the crusty snow, just not crusty enough to hold her weight. One shoe was pulled from her foot, and she turned back. She tried to wait on the porch, watching her mother stalk back and forth from the kitchen table to the window. There was only one road for miles, so Mother knew Daddy would see the child if she took to the road. Mother was angry and worried. They would not have a phone for years to come. She had younger ones at home and supper to get. So she fought the urge to bundle up and bring the child home herself. Ava had sneaked in through the cellar doors. She snuck up the spider-webby stairs just before Dad arrived. She knew what would happen later. Mother would recite the insolence and Daddy would nod. He would point his chin toward the closet that doubled as a potty room. He would make a big show for the other girls who would be whimpering a little in sympathy. First, he unbuckled his belt. In the dark room, he quietly spoke to Ava. "I want you to yell like you're on fire, but hold this pillow over your behind." Ava complied, and Daddy yelled, "And if I ever catch you running away again from your mother, I'll make you think run away," as he slammed the belt against the pillow. She cried because she knew she had to. When they came out to supper, she was careful to act as if her bottom hurt. Did Mother know about this play acting? Maybe it was done for the other kids, but Ava had no doubt they got the same treatment when it was their turns. Neither parent was cruel, but they had not been raised to spare the rod. Dinner was a solemn time. Each child ate as fast as possible after grace was mumbled. Then they all read books as salvation. The older ones reading books to the little ones, which were mostly impossibly hard for them to read. Ava would realize later that she had heard the English Romantic poets instead of Uncle Wiggily by the time she was 10. There were few books in the house. A Bible, of course, and an outdated set of World Book encyclopedias which had been donated by the grade school when they grew too old to be useful. Daddy read the evening paper and these encyclopedias. Mother wrote letters and did mending or ironing long into the night. So, not until just before bedtime at 9 did Daddy stir from the couch, smiling his wide grin that always reminded Ava of the way a jack-o'-lantern smile began and, if you weren't careful, widened. He stood, pretending to be going to the kitchen for his nightly snack of saltines and a glass of milk. But they knew. Even Mother sat up a little straighter. Daddy did not get to bestow many gifts, so he drew this out. "Shut off the lights," he said. "I'll use my flashlight. Now turn your backs for a minute." They heard the slow withdrawal from the rumpled bag. They heard a tinkling sound. Daddy shook the batteries down in his big silver flashlight and then said, "Now you can look." Shimmering on the low table in front of the couch was a most amazing sight. It was a silver, heavily etched Christmas tree, made of increasingly narrow plastic boughs, stacked with spacers between so that they looked like a tree covered with ice or snow. At the tip of each bough hung a tiny glass ornament, the size of the tip of Ava's little finger, a miniature Christmas ball with all the reflectivity and sparkle of the real thing. The blue one was Ava's favorite, just as the blue lights on the real Christmas tree Daddy sometimes cut from the ditch on his way home. The big trees were sometimes disappointing, and it showed on Mother's face. She did not cry right away, but after they had propped, preened, drilled holes, and filled them with cedar boughs from elsewhere in an attempt to approximate a shapely tree, they sometimes heard her quietly weeping as Daddy tried to console her. But for now, this replica of a tree you might see on TV, but only 1 foot tall, delighted Ava. She reached to claim the blue ball as her own personal ornament. "They break, you know," said Daddy, and looked around at all his children, holding their breath and blinking back their private tears and thoughts. "Let's put it up high so the cats don't get at it." There was some talk in hushed tones in their parents' bedroom that night. Their troubles were many, and it was by the grace of hard work and good minds, as well as some quiet charity from neighbors, that they survived each winter out there on the steel-hard plains. But for tomorrow, they could be sure that the prize of the glistening tree would still gleam as bright as it had this night.